Good afternoon. This is the opening of the Wednesday, February 15, 2023 regular board meeting of the Sequoia Union High School District Board of Trustees. The first items on our agenda are closed session items. So at this time, we will take public comment from anybody wishing to make a public comment about the closed session items. We'll hear public comment on other items later. I see a couple attendees. If either of you would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand now. Okay. We have no comments from members of the public in attendance and none from online, so we will recess to close session and plan to return at 6 p.m. Thank you. Okay, we are reconvening to public session. There will be opportunities for people to address the board for items on the agenda at the time of each agenda item. And there'll be a time in the agenda for people to comment to the board about items not on the agenda. And when we get to the first one of those, I'll explain the timing and how that will run. So now we are on roll call.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez. Student trustee Swaminathan. Trustee Nori. Here. Trustee Koo.
Here.
Trustee Dubois.
Here.
Vice President Stevenson.
Here.
President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Next, we have approval of the agenda, and I'd like to make one change to the agenda, which is to move the item 13.5 about student trustees being able to make motions to be the first action item. If the board agrees, I'd seek a motion for the agenda as so amended.
I'll move to approve the agendas as amended.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Everyone in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Great. It unanimously passes. Okay, next is report out on closed session items. We have 2 items to report. By a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-14. And by a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-12. Okay, now we come to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any comments about the consent agenda or anything they want to have pulled?
President Jen, I'd like to pull, I'm getting the item right now. Item 7.11.
Okay. Laura, do you have any comments from the public for this item? Laura, do we have any comments from the public?
The
None.
consent agenda?
Correct.
No, we don't.
Okay. Does any board member want to pull any other items from the consent agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda absent item 7.11?
So moved.
Trustee Nori. Approval of consent?
Yes.
Trustee Koo.
Yes.
Sorry. Trustee Dubois.
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson.
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, so now we'll turn attention to item 7.11. Shanice, do you have something you'd like to say about that item?
Thank you so much. I wanted to pull this item, and I actually wanted to publicly thank Ms. Hanson and Crystal for being consultants on this one. and also talking to other folks that I felt was good people to kind of brainstorm with. I read the proposal, the text, there's 4 of them. 57 bus, ragtime, firekeeper daughter, and indivisible, sorry, small print. And I kind of had a knee-jerk reaction because particularly 57 bus and firekeeper's daughter were pretty explicit. I think 57 was definitely one that was taken out of the news and rewrote about, it really is around gender identity, but also violence towards those individuals who identify differently than the person who committed the crime against them. And so both of these books just brought up trauma for me, to be honest. Like my first gut reaction was like, how are we going to hold this in class? How are we going to support students whom this may require a trauma reaction to it? It just brought up a lot of questions for me, not against the topic, not against what was being taught, because we do need to talk about real things. And so I just wanted to pull it out and just have a quick conversation about that. And for you to speak to that, Bonnie, about how is this actually taught in the classroom and how is it held?
So, quickly before that, I had a question. Is this just for Woodside? Because I distinctly remember my senior year of high school, we read 57 bus in one of our.
But this is from Woodside and they all make their own recommendations.
We had a small snafu in a class where a book that had not been approved was taught in a gender studies class, I believe. But that was so it's up for approval tonight. It's also already taught at East Palo Alto Academy. They do opt to not teach 57 bus at the freshman level because it is a hard topic. And what I would say about these books is, first of all, they're all highly acclaimed pieces of literature. 57 bus is one Time Magazine's one of the best youth young adult books of all time. School Library Journal Best Book of 2010, Washington Post Best Book of 2010, California Book Awards Young Adult winner, and then Firekeeper Daughter, much the same. Time Magazine, it's on their best young adult books of all time. It won the American Indian Youth Honor Book. It won the Prince Medal winner, which is for the best book for teens from the Library Association. And then it also won the Morris Award from the American Library Association for best debut novel. And the Obamas are producing it for Netflix. I don't know if that makes you like it more or less. It makes me like it more. And what I would say is that most of literature discusses hard topics, and that's certainly no exception here. And that what we would like, we're not going to advocate for the choosing of texts where a sexual encounter goes on and on and on. We're not going to advocate for a book that doesn't have any literary merit to it. We will not be reading the Babysitters Clubs in the Sequoia Union High School District. We will not be reading Ken Follett novel in the Sequoia Union High School District. But that all of the books on this list are commonly found in school library canons. And the really important thing is that we are preparing teachers to teach to these novels. So for instance, all 4 of the books that are before you tonight from Woodside are going to go through the process where they create an English unit and they will work with the teacher on special assignment for English at the district office. They'll talk about what the assessments are going to be. They'll talk about what Common Core standards they're going to cover. They'll talk about everything from what language might be difficult for students to understand to what triggers might this have for students and how do we need to address those triggers when we're going through this book. This is not something new we do in this district. I will tell you anecdotally that I taught Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye once, and I found out about so much hurt from my students that broke my heart that with great courage, opted to never teach it again.
Mhm.
So difficult novel topics are not new to us, which is why it's so important that we're continually making sure that our teachers have the support they need to take those on in the classroom, because the idea is to study great literature, but also to grow and understanding, and not just Common Core, thinking on deeper levels of learning, but also seeing the world from different points of view. One thing that I'm really excited about Bus 57 is that it's nonfiction, and we're really trying to build more nonfiction into our text, which is also aligned with the Common Core. So yes, these books have some rough spots in them. We are not breaking frontier ground in adding them to our list. They can be found on many school lists. And I do believe that our teachers will be well prepared to address the topics.
Okay, that was my concern, is more of coming from a clinical perspective, of not knowing who's in the classroom and in trauma. I know the first year I was here, I did have a white-looking student approach me about a book that was being taught in the classroom that really created trauma for them, and didn't want to share it with the teacher in fear of retaliation. So, and I was like, okay, how do we really teach this in class where students feel safe and having trauma-informed teaching instruction around those areas? Because we still need to be real.
Yes.
And we still need to be truthful about what's happening in our communities and to individuals and community and populations of people, because we want to respect their story. So I just brought it up because I did have a knee-jerk reaction, and I needed to be transparent about that from a clinical perspective. But I did want to say I love that it is an award-winning book. I believe that when I looked at all the list of all the schools, they're trying to diversify
Yes.
the characters, which I'm really happy about. And I think that goes with ethnic studies. But I still want to encourage us to do like some type of asset-based books. I've seen over the last 2 years a lot of really hard stories. And there's not this balance of like, I know everybody doesn't want to go see the hokey movie, but it's like, but we also need to balance that out, because what happens is we start characterizing people's stories as this singular, I always say I grow out of adversity. And then I'm like, hold up. No, like there's some really, really good reasons why I do things instead of adversity, right? And so being able to balance both sides of the brain around those things, that everything is not always adversity, that you do things out of passion and love and gifts that were given to you.
Yes. And I hear you, and I agree 110% with what you are saying. And I think that is a very real concern and issue. And we are looking for more novels that reflect not just a diversity in ethnic background, but also a diversity and experience in those backgrounds. I do think that we have some beautiful stories that demonstrate that, like Their Eyes Were Watching God, or the Joy Luck Club. But what I would also caution is there's not a lot of great literature that is about everything going well for a person.
Mhm.
And I think it's because it's boring to read about everything going well for a person. And I think that is felt, I think it's more of an issue for many of our BIPOC, for BIPOC literature. But I don't
that's
think
what
it
I've
is
been seeing.
only BIPOC literature.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what I've been seeing, kind of through that lens.
Sure.
It's the asset-based kind of work and representation of authors.
And that
Which I
wouldn't
think
just
we're
be in
growing.
English.
Yeah.
That would be in history. It would
would be
be in
everywhere.
math examples, but yes.
So I appreciate all the information. I just had a knee-jerk reaction. I was like, okay, let me reflect. But I wanted to say thank you to you and to the EDC and to Crystal for hearing my other side of the other hat, which is always asset-based, which is where a lot of the work that I've been doing is trying to be more strength-based. So,
And I want to recognize that your concerns, in my opinion, are quite valid.
okay. So I move to approve these texts, or I shouldn't say it like that.
I also had a quick question. Sorry to join the
I'm sorry.
join the Zoom a little
Okay.
bit late. It's me, student trustee.
Samantha, okay.
Sorry, I'm joining on Zoom today, but hopefully from this point onwards, I'll be back in person.
Oh, no, that's not Samantha, it's Avantika. Thank you.
Avantika, yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
What-
I really love the discussion that I kind of joined a little bit at a random point, but I'm just really enjoying that. I do want to know a little bit more about how the bus 57 is planning on being taught. My understanding of the book is that it's more of a discussion around gender identity and less including of the criminal justice and racial aspects. That was my understanding when I read the book. So I just want to know how that's going to be taught and kind of just acknowledging that the author of the book doesn't have the diverse experiences of the main characters in the book and how that kind of discussion will look like.
So we'll be building a unit with the site for each of these books. And so it will be very intentional, the work that we put into making sure that we are addressing the book appropriately and being cognizant of the experiences of all of the students in the room. I could go into more detail later and I can show you what we do for our novel building frameworks for units. I also don't know if you heard, Avantika, but this book has already actually been taught at MA and in at East Palo Alto Academy. So there, for instance, EPAA does a unit on isms, on how we think about and refer to people with different traits that they do before the start of the unit. They will be sharing that with the team building the unit for Woodside. But in short, it will be intentional.
Yeah, and
That sounds lovely.
I
I would love to be, I would love to know more about how that process works, just
Sure.
out of my own curiosity and, yeah, my interest in, again, curriculum building and that sort of thing. So definitely, if you have any of those resources available, I'd love if you could send them my way.
Yeah, I'd rather
But yeah,
sit
that
down and
sounds
walk
lovely.
you through it, but I can send them as well.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I was just curious quickly. So does the school board see books like if we approve a book for one site, does it get approved for all the sites? Or do you have-
Yes.
Okay. So that's how I was curious because I do remember we read that book and I'd say like, I do trust that our teachers are more than capable of addressing it in a respectful manner. Because I remember it was actually one of my favorite books that we read in that class my senior year. And I think it's really cool. And I don't think it's just about, necessarily gender identity. I think it's a very heartwarming story about, an unfortunate situation that, caused a lot of trauma to both sides involved. But I think I would say that, especially if I'm understanding correctly, if it's being taught to freshmen, that, there might be more care than teaching it to seniors as to how to address some of these themes respectfully. But I think our teachers are more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, and I think for me, it wasn't about capability. It was about how do you hold space. So I'm looking at Carrie when we were always talking about trauma informed. And when I read that, I had a knee-jerk reaction. So, and I don't have those experiences, to be honest. And so I want to hold that for all characters in the book. How are we holding that? Because we don't know what's in the classroom, right? Everybody's not revealing who they are. And we want to hold them with a lot of love and care. And so
I will tell you a very personal story.
yeah.
My junior year of high school, we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And I made a comment about people who were suffering from mental illness because we were talking about the character of Boo Radley. And the teacher said, "Oh, that's not true." And every afternoon I was visiting a family member in a psych ward. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking. So I appreciate it. I just needed to be true to myself and the clinical work that I do, and the trauma informed work that we're all,
We're all
I've
doing.
heard Carrie talk about and all of us talk about. And so I just wanted to bring it to the forefront. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's very important. Thinking about the people who are going to be reading that book and how that will affect how that will connect with their own experiences, right? And I really loved what you said, Trustee Stevenson, about making sure that different perspectives are really being represented and books that also showcase different sides to these experiences and being a diversely identifying person. I think it's very important that we see joyful stories as well as stories that outline injustice, right? So, yeah. Lovely.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve already on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Student trustee Swaminathan,
Yes.
student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois, vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next are the special recognitions.
Yes, good evening. Tonight, we would like to recognize two seniors from Tides Academy's Black Student Union Club and Tide Academy's Black Student Union Advisor, Ms. Cherie Kaba, who I hear we have a much cooler name that I was not allowed to say. So I get the other stuff to read. I will turn this time over to Principal Simone Rickconnell, who will tell us a little bit more about these fabulous people.
Thank you, Superintendent Leach. Good evening, Board of Trustees. I'm really thrilled this evening. So seniors in Tide's class of 2023 have created a strong student activities program, and they've suggested and created clubs, contributed to ideas for classes and programs, and as the first graduating class, are intent on leaving their legacy. This evening is really special for us. We're really pleased to recognize the launch of Tide's Black Student Union, and our seniors, Isaac Bryson and Akaya Burrell, started it. They started with the idea, they've wanted one, and were really patient last year when we said, yes, we need an advisor. What can we do, right? So we started the search to make it happen. We had a few leads that didn't work out. And then at the start of this year, per the suggestion of a community member, I reached out to our community partners that we really have been working closely with at Tide. And one of those was the Awesome Boys and Girls Club. Almost instantly, I got emails recommending Miss Cherie Kaba, Ms. Chillin, and highly recommending her to be our advisor. I reached out, we met, and I had known of her because I'd seen her perform spoken word at BSU events and heard about her through our students who call her Chillin. And she's also very talented as the BGCP Computer Clubhouse coordinator. So with Isaac and Akaya, I'm pleased to recognize Cherie. She's committed to making sure all teens have opportunities to lead and find their voices. What she loves the most is the transformation that occurs when teens see that you are consistent and committed. And they begin to match that energy when the real work begins. And that's when they can begin educating and answering questions. So the lasting impact she hopes our BSU will have is to be known for being the first to allow teens to create big, think big, perform big, and execute big, and outside of the box. She is grateful that we chose her, but we are more grateful that she chose us. Because of Isaac and Akaya and our advisor, Cherie, the BSU has launched. When we had a club fair in the fall, 30 students signed up to be members. And for our small school, this meant a lot. It meant students saw the importance of having a Black student union and wanted to be members as Black students or allies. Cherie appreciates the diversity of the members. They meet every Thursday at lunchtime. And Isaac and Akaya have led the mission to discover ways of leaving their legacy at Tide. And so far, they've created anti-hate anagrams that were given out during United Against Hate Week. They're putting together ideas for a mural of positive art and affirmation on a Tide wall that would outlive 3 to 4, maybe more graduating classes, and a mural on a bench. So each time a student sits on the bench, it tells a story. They're participating in the BSU Black History Month events, which are tomorrow evening and Friday evening. And with our student activity program, planning a club heritage fair That might include a flash mob dance to a Beyonce song, and of course, the teaching of it, most important, spoken word piece, and to showcase solidarity, they will be wearing their BSU shirts provided by the Boys and Girls Club. So we are fortunate to have students with a vision who want to make it happen, are leading the club with innovative ideas. So Isaac, and it also holds us accountable to make sure Tide has an anti-hate, anti-racist culture at our school. So Isaac and Akaya, thank you for your initiative, your drive and perseverance. Ms. Chirikaba, Ms. Chillen, thank you for your faith in our Tide students and working with our youth, sharing your talent and passion, and being a great partner. And in case you're wondering, both Isaac and Akaya have great college options to consider. Akaya could not be here. She's actually at Outdoor Ed with our county's fifth graders this week. We have several students doing that. However, her mother, Miss Montantes, is here on her behalf. So Miss Montantes, Isaac, and Cherie, please join me up here to receive this well-deserved recognition.
Dartmoor. Yeah, a picture, like in the. Okay.
Oh, board, all right. One, two, three, several. One, two.
That's always the best. Thank you, Principal Kennel. And thank you, parents, for coming out.
Well, thanks so much. For those of you who are here for the special recognitions, you are free to stay as long or as short as you like. The next item on our agenda is Board of Trustees comments, superintendent comments, and committee reports. Let's see who has something to report, and then we'll pick an order. Carrie, you have something? Safik, you have something? Amy? So let's do it, and Crystal does. So Crystal, why don't you lead us off, and then we'll go in the order that Laura calls us for votes.
I just wanted to publicly thank our Ed Services Department, along with our HR department, for the fabulous professional development, all staff, all district professional development day that we had back on Monday, February 6th, seems like so long ago. And just a thank you to Woodside for hosting. It was and Sequoia for hosting, because they hosted our classified staff. For our classified staff, it was like the first big PD that we had for all of our classified staff to attend, and there were a variety of sessions. And everyone was really just happy with the opportunity to participate, and thank you, Todd, and to Freedom for putting that together. And I look forward to adding facilitators and options for our classified staff. You know, as always, our certificated professional development is off the charts. And so it was very nice to join in a lot of those different sessions and see everyone together. So my only request is next time we all are at the same site, just rocking it for an entire day together. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of your departments.
It's starting with Slavik. Trustee Nori.
Yeah, so me and Trustee Stevenson actually had a chance to attend the Menlo Atherton Shared Decision Making Site Council. I think it was last week. And, I think it went very well. I think, there were a lot of tough questions, but I think one thing that everyone appreciated was that the board was taking the time to, be present at school sites. A lot of what one teacher shared at least was she was like, we often say, oh, the central office, they never come to our school sites and never know what's happening. And, they were like, at least you guys came, you can't really say that anymore. So I think it went really well. And I think it does a lot to, rebuild trust and rebuild transparency with the community. I think even people, who came in a little hostile by the end were happy that, we were willing to be there and answer the tough questions and have a conversation with them.
Thank you. Trustee Ko.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight that I really enjoyed the board retreat. And so thank you again. I know Trustee Stevenson put a lot of work into it, but I really enjoyed it. And one of the topics was interpersonal dynamics. And as we were talking about it, I started realizing that my own work situation was fitting that downward spiral when it goes to fight or flight reaction and then shutting down entirely. So that was my big shift between the last board meeting and this board meeting, is that I don't have a job anymore because I left that dynamic. No, you guys didn't do that. But it really was taxing my physical and mental health. And that interpersonal dynamics training kind of reinforced what I already knew, because I was listening to my body and I said, I can't keep doing this, because if I'm not well, I'm not going to be productive. And so that's why, health and wellness is so important, because whether it's our staff or our students, if we are physically and mentally unwell, you can't perform at anything. So I'm really focused on recovering, taking a break, reassessing, and then figuring out my next step forward. But it's really a traumatic experience, but you try to be resilient and bounce back from it. And it was really important that I had people to talk to, so that I didn't feel like I was all alone. And some of you on this board were people that I confided in, and I really thank you for listening to me. So that was one thing I wanted to highlight. And it's so important, the work we do in our schools, to support our students and staff in that way as well. And then I wanted to highlight that Superintendent Leach and Trustee Stevenson and I went to the Redwood Shores Community Association annual meeting. And this was they have an annual meeting every year to highlight key things that are happening in their jurisdiction by local officials. So this was the first time they had an in-person event, because it's been virtual the past 2 years. So I wasn't exactly sure how many people would show up. And we walked in and whoa, it was a packed house. Like we couldn't even sit in the regular seats. Like we had to sit at our tables because it was packed. So people were really itching to get involved and engaged again, and really appreciate Interim Superintendent Leach for speaking at that annual meeting. And I hope it's something we could do more of as a district, is figure out what are the local forums that are out there that we could participate in. And if we have certain messages we want to share with the community, these are engaged voters. We had a chance to thank them for supporting the bond measure. And now we were able to build some goodwill with a local neighborhood, as well as all of the Redwood City offices were there. From city council members, they actually had the majority of their city council show up at this, as well as the police, park and rec, a bunch of different departments. So it's a great way to not just connect with the community, but also with other local organizations. And then I'll just finish up with this is the time of the year for selecting middle schools in Belmont Redwood Shore. So I have a 5th grader. And so one of the things I wanted everyone to remember was is it's really important to think about that continuum, that pathway, because as parents look at, we have an open middle school choice option in Belmont Redwood Shores. So, you know, all the parents get to see what's offered at the different middle schools. And a lot of the question was about math pathways. So that's very important to a lot of parents, and what 8th grade classes offer algebra, because they don't want to be shut out of higher math placement options in high school. And then there's also Nesbitt Middle School is now implementing an IB program. So there was a lot of talk of, hey, if there's IB there, then the natural path would be Sequoia. So it's almost like expanding beyond Carlmont being just the neighborhood school. But if you went to Nesbitt and you're committing to IB, then potentially you could go to Sequoia. Sandpiper is a K-8 school, and they're focusing on design thinking and project-based learning. And, you know, Ralston is the comprehensive middle school. So it was a lot of decision-making, and it was good to be a part of that process. And I just wanted to share that with the rest of the board, the importance of working with our feeder districts and understanding those pathways. That's it. Thanks.
Trustee Dubois.
Thanks. Try to make it as quick. Trustee Ginn and Trustee Stevenson and I attended the CTA breakfast. I want to thank CTA for the invitation, and it was really nice to get to know 2 teachers a lot better. I also attended the Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year event. All of the finalists were students from our district. The winner was a Redwood student, and as long as I've been paying attention for 11 years, I think that's the first time a Redwood student, correct me if I'm wrong, has won the award. So it was fantastic. Interim Superintendent Leach and Trustee Stevenson and I attended the Redwood Awards Night. That was also a just completely inspirational event. And I am so proud of the community partners we have, like Boys and Girls Club at Redwood. We didn't have them there several years ago. And last but not least, Trustee Stevenson went with me to watch Legally Blonde at Carlmont. It's the first time that we've had a major musical theater production at the school since COVID. 100 students were involved. It was fantastic. So thank you for going with me.
Okay, Vice President Stevenson.
Well, I was everywhere with everybody's speech, so I won't say anything. Nice hanging out with y'all. I'll just say that. I wanted to, of course, thank CTA and Edith for, is she here today? I can't see. Hey, Edith, for inviting us. I learned a lot about CTA and just some of the work that they can do and will do around supporting the district, around trainings and things of that sort. And so, Edith, I may be contacting you to understand that a little bit more. But was very happy about that. And just my wheels got turning. My wheels were My wheels were turning. There it is. Thank you. I wanted to give a report on our 2-person committee of housing, Savith and I. Right? We were on the same committee.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about
Okay,
that.
we had a good conversation. And one of the things that we kind of walked away with, talking to Joe Simidian about some of the housing that he's doing that he named in an article around Sequoia Union High School District, possibly being able to get the housing. So basically got Savith and I and Crystal on a committee, not a committee, on the email listing so that we can hear more about that versus through a newsletter or an article. So just to learn more and get closer to that. And he was very open to that. The other thing is that he's going to connect me with someone else to talk about how do you really determine the need for housing. And I checked in with Edith and there hasn't really been a survey. And Savith is going to do some work about what is the need and come back with some getting direction from the board about that. So, you know, the 2-person committee is working. So I'm excited. about that. So thank you, Sathik. The other thing is I went to the community trust meeting that is Menlo Park School District puts it on. And just for you to understand what a community trust is, it was, I forgot who, somebody, Dr. Maurice, somebody who was the superintendent there started, but it's a collection of interested people who meet regularly over breakfast, who have a stake and influence to build positive relationships that create and foster trust. Membership is inclusive, is organic in size, so that individuals have an equal voice and authority, and members represent an organization over a title. And the community trust is non-political, it's not an arena for self-promotion. No project or action comes out of the community trust. It's just growth, trust, energy of relationships that follow up and get things done. So I know Simone has been going, thank you, with all her experience with MA, but also Tide. And so I went for the first time today, and it was actually pretty refreshing because it was brought up, some of the incidents that have been happening at MA. And there was a few police departments that are there. I didn't realize Menlo Atherton or Menlo Park crosses 3 police departments. I didn't realize that. And so they talked about the culture of the school really made it safe there. And parents, and there was a couple of parents in the room who said, oh yeah, like we all get scared, but we also have a culture of see something, say something, and support. And so that was refreshing to kind of hear in a different setup. And then individuals just wanted to just connect and know who our superintendent is and our process. So I did announce our search so that we remind them to do the survey by Friday. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, or 2 things, SMC San Mateo School Board Association, gotta close my eyes. We're having the equity training, should have gotten the invite for February 27th. And I think, Crystal, did you get it? Okay. And you can also invite someone else from staff if you want them to come. So we're really looking forward to that. And then the very last thing the 2 last things I want to talk about, I did talk to a group of Jewish families that were really concerned about school in general, not necessarily just us, but also Menlo Park as well. And really had a really good conversation. I want to thank those women publicly for coming to talk to us. And what it boiled down to really isn't belonging, it's safety. And so, for kids, they're like, we got this, we know how to interact with our fellow classmates, and we have this community of safety. But from a parent perspective, they were talking about safety. And so I asked them if I could share it publicly, and they said yes. I'm not going to share their names, but I'll talk to you later. I will talk to you later about that, Crystal. That spirit of safety is really at the forefront of some of the families that have different experiences. And so I just wanted to share that. And then the very last thing, and I will hush. What was I going to say, y'all? I'm nervous. Maybe I forgot what I was going to say. The PD day was so much fun. I was everywhere. It was the board stuff of my whole work day. And went to the classified staff. I thought I was going to be sitting in the back. They asked me to speak. I wasn't speaking for the board, but then I was like, what do I say? Like, it was very last minute, like as soon as I walked in the door. So I did say great things. Like, I really appreciate y'all, and y'all the oil that helps us run, and share about my experience of a classified staff helping me to go to college. So that was a really good experience, and the people were excited to have that experience. And so I wanted to say, where's Todd? See, Todd, we're talking positive about HR. Thank you, Todd. And all your staff and what they do to love on our union partners, and for them to be seen, heard, and felt, and trained. Just wanted to publicly say that. And then donating to the newcomers donation, like I was really excited about that, and being at the schools. And I had a person call me about the professional day for the teachers and the counselors and things of that sort. And they really said some really wonderful things. And so what I've been trying to challenge people to do on my end, just because I think I I don't need nobody to pat me on my back, but give me examples of what's positive in our community, like specific examples, not that it was just great. And I'm getting those emails now. So I think that helps balance out what areas we need to grow in, our opportunities, but also what we're doing well. So with that, thank you.
President Gann.
So a lot's been covered. Thanks to my colleagues for covering those things. I'll report out on the Redwood City Together Collaborative. The last meeting, the main presentation was around the group that they formed. There was a number of youth riding bikes in downtown Redwood City. And they had some engagement with our district looking for solutions. A fair number of those students are district students, but I think others are from our youth from other districts and other areas. But the Redwood City Together team built a group to help engage those youth in positive ways throughout the community. Some of them are now employed by the city and in other ways helping out, particularly the leaders of that. So it was a real positive example of how that collaborative was able to have a positive impact. So I'll report that out there now, thinking about how to expand that engagement with youth. So that's something happening on the Redwood City Together group. One item that Shanice and Carrie left off was that we attended the adult school community meeting, and there were a lot of community partners there. And it was nice to have that whole group of people together. So she said she loved that meeting. It was a nice meeting with a lot of community partners there that were engaged in the adult school. So that was a fun event to attend. I made it to a couple of the LCAP meetings, and I think the new focus, I'll say it's new, but on the district as a district wide, I think led to discussions being district-wide. The groups that I have been in have been, while the parents were from different schools, because they knew that other parents were from other schools, they really focused on district-wide type of comments, which I thought was the right idea for the LCAP. So from what I observed from the small groups I was in, I thought it was that switch from having school focus to district focus was a positive. And the last thing I'll report out was that Safik, Shanice, Crystal and I did our first site tour to get some ideas for construction that's happened in the area. And we visited a local school that was designed by the same architect that we're working with to see something that he had done. I think it's the first of probably many school tours we'll be having in the coming months or years as we're looking at what to do with our sites, but it was fun to kick it off. So next item is student trustee comments.
Should I make my comments here or up there? Right here? Okay. So fancy, so new. Oh, actually, I think Avantika wanted to go first, so I will give her the space.
That's all right. You can start it off.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. I just got out of practice. Yay, swim season, I guess. Happy belated Valentine's Day and happy Black History Month. This semester, I'm actually taking an African American history course from Kenyatta. So I think that's another great thing about our district, to your point, Trustee Stevenson, is that we have access to things like that. At least those in middle college. So kind of relating to that, middle college applications are open for anyone listening that wants to apply. They're due in mid-March. And I've been here in the Birch Room, I think it was last week, and in the coming weeks, doing middle college promotions. So we've been talking to parents and students in our district. And it's been really fun for me to kind of break down my experience and see how I've developed throughout all of these years. In Sequoia Union High School District, but also in middle college. So that's just reminded me of kind of my gratitude for that. We also had our session to survey on the qualities of the superintendent hiring on Monday. And, some comments were things like preparedness for tough question asking and inquisition, and a person who checks to make sure, our students are doing well, who follows up with our community members, someone who's considerate, empathetic, thoughtful, dedicated, communicative, accountable for their mistakes. And Trustee Koo, I can't see you, but to your point about choosing middle schools for your fifth grader, actually my neighbor I can see you through the Zoom screen, actually. I'm staring at you, but not. My neighbor is kind of asking for my wisdom per se on navigating our district. And, they live in my same building, so Carlmont would be her high school. And, I'm also grateful to have the knowledge that I have and, to share that with her. But definitely in the future with the SAC, I want to work on wisdom that we can share with all of our students, not just our friendly neighbors that are close to us. And we also kind of discussed a bit about, the future challenges of the district and again, tracking in middle school and how we keep our students, on track in high school or on a different track, whatever is developmentally appropriate for them. And also, we hope to see an increase in access to classes that help our students grow. And for the things that make our district great, we mentioned that, Sequoia gives space to our community and our community members, and we have a vast collection of resources to aid in our development and our establishment of policy. So I think that's something that's very powerful, and I hope that we wield it with, love and growth and all of those wonderful things as Valentine's Day suggests. But that's all from me. Thank you.
That was wonderful. One thing I wanted to add about the things we thought the district was really successful in, it was or is our teachers and how capable they are and how invested all of them are in their students' growth. And I think that's just so wonderful. And I'm very grateful for the teachers I've been lucky to have in my high school experience. So I want to say a quick sorry for being on Zoom. I have the last of my college auditions this coming weekend, and then I will be back in person, hopefully until the end of the year. Yeah, I'm very excited about Sam and I sitting on the dais now, and just getting to connect more with our with the Board of Trustees. And I'll talk a little bit about the SAC meeting yesterday and what we sort of discussed. And so we talked about kind of the recent changes in the student trustee position and the powers that they thought that students should hold, or what do they think students should be a part of when it comes to the school board. We also talked about safety plans and how that information should be disseminated to students and parents, as well as the anti-bias training that was discussed in the special meeting last week. So starting off with the student trustee powers and all that, the students felt that student trustees should have a place in discussion of a lot of items, not things that had to do with financial information or employees of the district or anything like that, but just places where students might be directly affected by the decisions that are made. A couple of them also expressed interest in pursuing the student trustee position in their future, and that's just a very exciting thing. So I'm so excited to see where these bright students end up with their leadership and their great qualities. Also, moving on to student safety, they felt as though slideshows and presentations at the beginning of each year, as well as continuing the hands-on drills, are good ways that people can internalize the information they need when it comes to any sort of risky or dangerous situations. They also think that visuals in the form of flyers might be helpful for English language learners, as well as brief email updates, which parents can have access to and can read. They also think that administrators should talk to the schools and families at each site, as well as teachers in homeroom or in certain classes, to make sure that the information is reliable. They also think there should be consistent updates and even a panorama survey a couple times throughout the year about different concepts or safety things that people should know. So that information is really understood. And then the anti-bias training. The SAC wants to know more about how the anti-bias training works. Does it work? They want more transparency around what whether it helps and the impact that those sort of trainings create. And they also want to know other ways of training teachers and staff. They also want to make sure that that training isn't exclusive to teachers and that everyone within the district, administration, teachers, and all staff are included in that. And they also mentioned that they feel like substitute teachers are sometimes left out of those trainings, and they want to make sure they are not overlooked in that. Another person shared that their friend had been doing research on suspension rates and how personal judgment can lead to students being suspended or expelled or things like that, and they want to make sure that student futures aren't being affected. So I think information around that would be very useful. Lastly, other updates that students had were maintenance of amenities like the bathrooms and water fountains. One student mentioned that she couldn't find a working water fountain near her class and had to walk to a different building. And on a positive note, though, MA had a Lunar New Year event that was organized by teachers and clubs, and the student who mentioned this thought it was really lovely how teachers and club leaders were coming together to put something like that together after school, and it was just so exciting to see the clubs and the teachers come together to create that cultural event. So those are all the updates from the SAC meeting this week. And those are all the updates from me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the comments from the Sequoia District Teachers Association.
Hello. So Trustee Stevenson and Dubois stole my thunder a little bit. We had the first CTA board trustee breakfast that we've had in a number of years. For years and years, it was always a new board member breakfast, and it was never offered in a year when we had just had new board members. And then we didn't have it for 4 or 5 years. And so they said, invite anyone you want to. And we were very excited that most of you were able to come. I know Trustee Koo wasn't available. And we'll get you sometime, Suffolk. But I thought it was a wonderful event, and I am definitely open to questions about how CTA is organized, or, you know, I'm more of an expert on how SDTA works. So any of those questions, I'm happy to be a resource. Along the CTA vein, we have in the structure of CTA, the decision-making body is our state council, and we have a vacancy for our representative to state council. So we're currently in the middle of an election to elect our representative and an alternate. We were super excited that one of our very new teachers was interested in doing that and threw his name in the ring. And his hat, he put his name in his hat, he threw it in the ring. We have 2 applicants, and the rules call for the top vote getter to get the spot and the second vote getter to be the alternate. So everybody's a winner, and I'm very excited about that. We are also in the midst of our bargaining survey. We've had over 250 responses so far. We're hoping for many more so that we can really hear from our members. We've also had some open meetings that our bargaining team members have had for our members to drop in, either in person or by Zoom, to ask questions, give suggestions, talk through some of the ideas that they have, and that's been exciting. And we also have 2 new representatives. That same new teacher stepped up to be a representative for a vacancy at Menlo Atherton. And we have a newer teacher who stepped up to fill a vacancy at Sequoia, thanks to a sabbatical for the spring semester. So we have a whole lot of new energetic blood coming around, which is great because I am counting the hours until vacation. Thank you so much.
Okay, the next item is comment from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. If there's anyone in the Zoom audience wanting to make a comment. Okay, the next item is public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Do any of the attendees wish to make a public comment about items not on the agenda? Okay. So next we have action items, and with the revision to the agenda, we are beginning with the adoption of resolution number 1745, governing board of Sequoia Union High School District to adopt a position in favor of equitable representation of student trustees to motion vote. Looking up so I can read the yeah, I will pull up the agenda and attachment and read it. Okay, so I'm going to read the resolution. Resolution 1745, governing board of Sequoia Union High School District to adopt a position in favor of equitable representation of student trustees to motion vote. Whereas the student trustees are selected by the district's high school students in accordance with procedures approved by the Board of Trustees and with a specific goal of representing students' ideas, viewpoints, and reactions to the educational program. And whereas student trustees also enhance communication between the board and the student body and encourage student involvement in district affairs. And whereas California Education Code Section 35012 provides that student trustees shall have preferential voting rights, and preferential votes are a formal expression of opinion that is recorded in the minutes and cast before the official vote of the Board of Trustees. And whereas California Education Code Section 35012 further provides that the governing board of a school district may adopt a resolution authorizing the student trustee or trustees to make motions that may be acted upon by the governing board, except on matters dealing with employer-employee relations. And whereas the Board of Trustees believes that authorizing its student trustees to make motions will increase student involvement in district affairs. And now, therefore, it is hereby determined that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes its student trustees to make motions that may be acted on by the Board of Trustees, except on matters dealing with employer-employee relations. Student trustees may not be included in determining the vote required to carry a measure before the board and may not be liable for any acts of the governing board. So that's the resolution before us. I want to thank Trustee Stevenson for encouraging more student voice and excited to have you up at the dais and with this resolution able to participate in making motions. I don't know if any board members would like to say any comments.
I'm happy. At first I was like, Crystal, help me understand this. Don't they do that already? And you had to explain to me what? What did you have to explain to me? Because I didn't get it. I thought they voted. But what's the difference? Because I actually told some students about this just in case they're.
So they vote, but now they have the opportunity to make a motion.
Oh.
So be involved in that and then enjoy the comfy seats at the dais and have your own microphone.
Okay. Because I actually told some, I went to a government class and I sent this to them and said, hey, they said they might have to make up and come to a board meeting. I was like, well, this would be a great one to come to because we're actually talking about students. So thank you, Trustee Jen, for doing this. I think it's important. The CSBA conference 2 years ago talked, I remember sitting with Carrie and they talked a lot about student voices. And I think as much as we can have the student present to help us understand their own voice. I'm speaking as a parent. Sometimes it's hard to listen to kids when you have your own idea, but we really want to make sure the student voice is there because it could be different. So thank you.
Anybody else want to say something? Go ahead, Sabe.
Oh, I was just gonna say, not that I have any personal bias, but I do think that the student trustee is one of the strongest our district has, and we've had some great student trustees, and I think doing everything we can to strengthen the student voice is very important. So I'm glad we did this.
Okay, so I think we can do a show of hands vote for this one. No,
Roll call.
Roll call, okay.
Well, you need a motion in a second.
Thank you.
I move for this resolution to adopt the position in favor of equitable representation of student trustee to nominate a vote, sorry.
I'll second.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
student trustee Swaminathan,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois, vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes,
Motion adopted.
great, thank you. So now we have action item 13.1, approval of comprehensive school safety plans for 2023, 2024.
Good evening, Superintendent Leach, President Ginn, Vice President Stevenson, and members of the board. These are the plans that our expert, Jarrett Dooley, the Director of Student Services, works on each year with the site principals to make sure that we run through all of the compliance pieces of the plan, as well as, any of the things that we add in just site to site as they review these plans with site council and with local fire and police department. And I want to underscore the importance of these because these are the plans that all of our sites fall back on when they're communicating with the district on anything that they're doing to address safety at the site. So with that, I will turn it over to Jared to present on how site safety plans get put together.
Any questions? No, it definitely was not. So as Dr. Chacon just mentioned, these are comprehensive school safety plans that didn't exist in our district up until a few years ago when we realized in student services that we were out of compliance. These are very formal, detailed, lengthy documents. These are not designed to guide us in emergencies. This is California Education Code required information to provide to the public. As we're well aware, right, this is mid-February. This is our final step in having the board approve these documents to send to the County Office of Education for review, just to make sure that we are in compliance. The important work are the additional components that are highly confidential contained at our school sites, as far as how are we implementing and practicing the finer details of our comprehensive school safety plans. And so what I can mention are some additional pieces of information that our school sites hold in high confidence, because we work very closely. I just happen to be a steering committee member for the County Office of Ed's Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities. That group is responsible for not only developing the Big Five, which is our countywide adopted response protocols for school emergencies, but constantly looking at the information contained in the Big Five and modifying it and re-educating and retraining as many staff as possible annually in our district. We just had a meeting on Monday of this week where, again, based on trends that we are seeing, not just locally, not just here in the state, but across the United States, modifying some of that information yet again. And so it's really a living document that the coalition continues to work on, and then it trickles to me here to the school sites, and we work pretty much monthly with our administrative vice principals in order to make sure that information gets to the school sites. So just as some examples of information that is confidential based on the recommendations of the coalition, because there is some sensitive information that we don't want to be released to the public, which includes our drill schedules for our responses for the Big Five, when we are reviewing that information, not just with students, but also staff and or the public. We know we've had a lot of communication recently in all of those areas. Additional emergency contact information for our local agencies, Also our school site staff. We have campus maps, which include shut-off locations, some important other important locations like our evacuation sites, like mentioned, our utilities, our access points, our medical triage location, decontamination, media station, and a helicopter landing pad. Yes, that is the detail that we tried to get into so that in a true emergency, our staff are prepared to handle the emergency. So we're working pretty diligently on an ongoing basis to get this information not just finalized, but also in the hands of the people that need it. And then lastly, our school site and district incident command trees, we are working on revamping that actually this school year so that we can have improved communication, as Dr. Chacon mentioned too, in our emergency processes and protocols. So in closing of this presentation, we present to you the 23-24 comprehensive school plan, school safety plans for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have questions or comments? Carrie, go ahead.
Comment, maybe a question. I remember being at Delegate Assembly when we were in breakout groups talking about school safety plans, and I didn't know what people were talking about and realized we didn't have them. So I'm so appreciative of this work. I know it's a lot of work, but they're very interesting reports to go through with all of the detail. I'm sorry, this is an example of a question I didn't ask in advance. I'm always guilty of that. The only question I have, it was so obvious that when kids came back after COVID, that behavior issues were up severely, probably based on trauma and just being out of practice, going to school. When kids came back after COVID, the behavior issues were way up, and we knew that, right? Kids had missed out on school and all that happened, and the trauma that happened in homes and in the community. My only question is referrals. So that data, does that mean when kids are referred, is that when they're going to an AVP, or is it broader than that? Is it also referred to counseling? And sorry, I didn't ask that in advance.
Yeah, the data is included in these reports are strictly in discipline. Yeah, so most likely our administrative vice principals.
Are those for the trauma training that we've had? So all of our administrative vice principals have been through pretty much extensive trauma training at this point, right? Yes. Yeah, which is great. So I really appreciate all the work that's been done.
Yeah, we've been very aware of the return to school for our students and providing additional opportunities and ongoing professional development, not just for our administrators, but across the board with our MTSS and our mental health and wellness teams.
I just wanted to ask, well, I guess this is a larger question for everyone, but how do we disseminate documents like these to students? It's a lot of information, and I know like not everything is relevant to us. We don't need to know absolutely everything because we do have adults that are with us, but what are like the major points that we need to be making sure that students understand?
Really good question. To answer that, it's changing. And we are actually in dialogue with our teams now to make sure, our teams being us in student services and our site administrators overseeing safety, to be sure that students and staff are well aware not only of protocols like the Big Five, because that's what we live by in the county, our Big Five response to emergency situations, that we get to a place where everybody on a school campus understands the difference between a shelter in place and a lockdown. We still have work to do, and that will probably continue for a long time. We interact pretty consistently with our law enforcement agencies. We have a lot of law enforcement agencies that we interact with across all of our attendance boundaries. And so we're constantly in communication with them, reteaching the same Big Five emergency responses as well. So it's ongoing, And I understand the importance, and I've heard some of the comments, and it's clear that we need to keep doing work in that regard to make sure that our students understand what the Big Five is as well. And that's important.
Can you share real quick, what are I'm looking for the Big Five. What is Big Five?
Yeah, if we want to pull up Josue, can we pull up one of the samples?
I was trying to figure out what the topical areas were. I'm like, did I miss it?
I see him back there working.
Oh, he doesn't have.
They're basically at the end of.
Oh, they're at
each
the
document.
end.
Yeah.
Oh, the 98 pages. Okay, gotcha.
You go all the way to 103, I think it was, page 103.
I think is it page 86?
Or maybe
The
86.
Big Five community packet, right?
Thank you, Josue.
Okay.
One more
thank
page
you.
down.
Okay. Okay.
There you go. So they're basically in order of seriousness. The key theme, that was not it. The key theme of Big Five and the work of the coalition is think on your feet. It's very different than 5 years ago, based on incidents that have occurred. And so while these are the 5 most common responses given specific situations to include shelter in place, drop, cover, and hold for earthquakes, secure campus, that means an intruder in the vicinity or dangerous person maybe on the edge of campus. Lockdown barricade is very serious and imminent threat on campus. And evacuation typically comes after, say, the drop, cover, and hold or a fire. Shelter in place could be anything from chemicals in the air, smoke, wildfires, where we may have to go shelter in place, where we close doors and teachers continue teaching. We've had some confusion in some incidents between a lockdown and a shelter in place, to the point of sitting down with law enforcement agencies who invoked something that wasn't needed. Those are ongoing dialogues, like I said, so that we can all just be better and better communicate and debrief after incidents as well. So those are the 5 samples there. Trustee Stevenson. Thank you, Josue. Yeah.
Admittedly, I did not know all of the Big Five. But yeah, I think that's really important. And even just putting like that page alone on our website is like something that could be extremely helpful. Just even having like, us as human beings, we categorize the world in order to process. So in order to process a situation like that, like teachers going over with their students, okay, here's the Big Five, guys. This is what's happening right now. This is the drill that's happening. And, having that up in the classroom available, I think that could be really comforting to students. So yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, even just that one page, like with little bullets, like there's air pollution, things like that. So just something super big, super obvious and available.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I don't know if you might be the right person to ask this, but I forwarded an article to the board that I read in one of the local newspapers. Is there been a decision kind of saying related to this that we won't practice lockdown drills per se, and we've shifted to more informative and less actual practice around them?
Yeah, that was actually a recommendation of the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities due to having a trauma-informed response to emergencies. Like I've said, we are constantly dialoguing about what's best practice. And even though that's a recommendation, there have been some discussions to see how we can be better and better prepare our students and staff in a serious emergency, where just relying like on a PowerPoint presentation, there's value there and there's dialogue, but we're constantly talking about, can it be better? While thinking about, talking about some serious incidents is really trauma inducing for a lot of people.
But you know what, I don't know if people remember the regional center down south that ended up having an active shooting. And it rocked all the regional centers, and I was working at the regional center at the time. And one of the responses I had was like, hey, can we have an active shooter training? And people are like, oh, I don't know. And, we were all the same thing, trauma, all this kind of stuff. But in actuality, we brought someone in who did work around bias and safety. It was more comprehensive and interactive. And what we found was, like, after we talked about what's safe and what's not safe, how bias brings in what's safe and what's not safe, and really talking about and practicing those things and doing the strong start, and then bringing bringing you back grounded actually help some people. And for those who were really struggling, we didn't require them to do the training because, it could be trauma inducing for them. We know that they know themselves very well, but it actually helped quite a bit because it gave you back your control, like what I can do, right, in a situation. So it's just another perspective. I'm not asking for anything, but just giving you a different perspective of a person who went through knowing that my colleagues in another part of the state was dealing with that, and then what we could do.
Any
Yeah,
other
just
comments?
to
Go ahead.
quickly jump off of that. So my freshman year at MA, we experienced something. No one was at a real threat, but I do think even then, like, I completely understand where people might coming from, but I think having the practice of doing it once is kind of what prepares you if the real thing might ever happen. It's an unfortunate reality, but when we do live in something like that, I think I'd much rather prefer that, students have some idea or have practiced instead of, learn from a webinar. But yeah, I understand the issue.
We don't disagree. We actually brought this very issue up at Principals Council, and a lot of the feedback was, yes, we can have dialogue before and we can have dialogue after to address the trauma informed and the muscle memory of what to do in an emergency and who does what in a classroom, and the practice would be something that principals in that meeting said they would love to bring back. And so they are going to be doing drills, maybe that look a little different than a full evacuation or full duck cover and hold, but drills related to lockdown.
Okay, would our student trustees like to make a motion to approve this item 13.1?
Motion to approve 13.1 comprehensive school site plans, safety plans.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor of passing item 13.1?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passes. Next, we have item 13.2, approval of the Tide Academy WASC self-study.
Well, I don't know if any of you brought your door jamb holders with you this evening, but if you ever had any doubt that they are hard at work at Tide, that it's a beautiful report. And so I want to invite, there it is, look at that. It's really loaded with good stuff. I would like to invite our Tide administrators up to give us an overview, and we will all, in our minds or with our fingers, send them good vibes for a visit that I would bet good money is going to go really well from WASC accreditation. Come on up.
Well, good evening. We definitely want to save trees, but we did limit the number of paper copies, but they are really pretty. So thank you for having us this evening. I would love to introduce, the wonderful Tina Smith, Vice Principal, and our awesome WASC coordinator / English chair / EDC rep / everything else, Daphne Passia McCann, who we can attribute a lot of this amazing work to. So we're just going to give you an overview this evening. You have the report, but we're going to give you an overview of the timeline and process, because that was something I think we really delved into, and we're pretty proud of that. So do I switch the slide? Can I control the slides? Yep. Arrow down. Arrow side or arrow down?
You said down.
Down. Okay.
Not working. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Daphne, who's going to tell you about our timeline.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daphne Passia McCann. My students call me Miss McCann. And so I want to start off just giving a really brief overview of the timeline. We worked super hard to have not only staff involved, but get all of the student voice and invite as many family members as we possibly could. So this is just for your reference, but really the timeline began with our staff kind of pausing and saying, hey, you know, we've tried a lot of things over the years. We wanted to accomplish so many things, but who are we now today as Tide Academy? And so we really started the self-study process back in May, revisiting the original vision, mission, and SLOs that was created, you know, when the school opened or before the school opened, and then asking ourselves, okay, but what are we really offering now? Who are we today? And that's where that process really began. For pretty much like half of this timeline was about the mission, vision, and SLOs, and then we moved on to the focus groups.
Just briefly, we also wanted to highlight the fact that we took input from all of our different stakeholders. And so these are ways that we did look at input from people. For example, when we knew we wanted to look at making changes to our CTE pathway, we surveyed all of our current students to see what they were interested in the CTE world and what classes they wanted to come up with our new pathway that started this year, which is GID, Graphic and Interactive Design. But these are the different surveys we put out.
So going back to the timeline, these are actually pictures from that workshop. The first workshop we did over summer, we invited staff members, students, and parents to help us revise and draft a new vision, mission, and student learner outcomes. We actually did design thinking to ensure equity of voice so that no one stakeholder group would overpower another. And it was so much fun. We grouped, you know, we had Post-its everywhere. And then from that, we ended up with a draft that we later took to the staff, drafted it again with the staff, and then we brought it to the students and then all the way back to site council. These are some examples of the documents that we threw out there when staff were focused in their focus groups and their home groups. So we made sure that everyone was involved in one of the focus groups, both classified and certificated staff. And every group kind of had their own document, and everyone was everyone was allowed and able to write and contribute. So we crowdsourced our writing as an entire staff. We really did. And you can, if you look at the pictures, you can actually see how many different people edited that singular prompt right in the middle. There's just a bunch of names in there. Everyone was typing. It was wonderful. And then we also, as you can see, had some student work sample analyses where all of the departments came together. We looked at what our students were doing, you know, were they meeting, what did meeting standards look like? What did, you know, approaching look like, et cetera, et cetera. So we did a lot of great work in our focus groups and our home groups. This is an example of how we gathered student input. So not only were students allowed to participate in any of the workshops for the mission, vision, and SLOs, but once we had those drafts, we actually brought them into the Nucleus classroom, every single one of them, and every single Nucleus teacher facilitated a discussion asking them about their feedback. What do you think about this, right? And the students helped us wordsmith. And so we listened to their feedback, and the final draft is actually, they were almost the last ones to touch the slows. And so that was really great. And then we also had them participate in our focus groups, particularly C and D and E. So learning and teaching, assessments and accountability, and school culture. We led some discussions, all of the Nucleus teachers asking students, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Right. And so they were contributing that way. They put in their input, and we included their insight in the actual report. So you can see that in the focus group section. And then the very last stage, so chapter 4, areas of strength and growth, we did the design thinking process again. So based on what staff had done in the focus groups, we pulled out those themes, and then we brought out the big posters, we brought out all the Post-its, and using a data dive, we kind of walked around and we used all of that data we found as a staff to sort of support, okay, where are our areas of strength and growth? We did a gallery walk. These are actual pictures from that day that we did as a staff. And from that, the action plan the action items were created. And so it was lots of involvement. It was such a great time. And a challenging time, but it was great. And our staff really pulled through. They were rock stars. They all contributed, our students, our families, and I'm really happy and proud of them. So, yeah.
So she kind of already explained this slide of how we got here. We came up with 5 action plans, and the next 5 slides we'll delve a little bit deeper into what each one of those are, because there are actions that are associated with them.
I'm not sure I've ever been part of a WASC self-study that's been described as fun, but we had fun. So our first action plan, we are committed to increasing A through G eligibility and college and career readiness. Our SLOs are about that. Our mission and vision are about that. We have done constructing meaning professional development for all teachers and are now doing implementation cohorts that will continue. We have vertical implementation of the different strategies, right? So from 9th to 10th to 11th to 12th grade, now that we are a full school and have 4 grade levels, we are going to work on how to provide targeted academic support, because currently our schedule does not allow for support, any intervention, but we have very creative out of the box thinking to incorporate that. So students get literacy and math support. As well as our small population of English learners, that they get the literacy support they need as well. And then across the curriculum, close reading of informational texts. So this all came out of staff input and our emerging data. So you probably saw the theme in the report. Tide finally has some data on a dashboard, right? So we have some things that we can refer to as far as that quantitative piece.
That data and input that really came from across all different stakeholders is that we also want to help students increase performance in math. So the idea is that all of our math teachers are going to join the SUHSD math initiative, and then they're going to implement those strategies, right? So it's more than just joining, it's also math initiative. Yes. Yeah. And then, so it's more than just being part of it, it's also the implementation, right? Because it's a 2-step process. And then on top of it, we also saw our data in terms of process writing, and we want to get that up higher. And so we agreed that we would focus on process writing across all content areas.
And that might be, we might note as the A1I initiative, the algebra, right? Now we are incorporating initiative strategies in all of our math instructions, focusing on Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2 for sure. And our teachers are already doing it. 1's gone through the cohort and 2 will do it in the fall as well. The other thing that came along was we have Nucleus. That's our advisory. Every student is in Nucleus. We want to refine it. We want to maximize it. Tina has led some awesome work refining it already. And through our self-study, we decided we want to refine it even further.
including what is our structure for that academic support. Maybe that looks like student-run tutorials, maybe stealing some Avid strategies, so to speak. And then how does the dual credit piece with Foothill College work? Because currently students do take a dual credit courses through Nucleus for college career planning, a whole variety, and how much of that do we want to keep or not? Those are the things that we're going to be talking about. And of course, we're going to survey our students to see what they think about it.
So as Simone already pointed out, we actually finally have data, right? And that's not to say, I think, considering we were a brand new school trying to get up and running, we did a great job coming up with data sources that wasn't related to a dashboard or a CASP scores, right? We looked at ICAs, thank you, Bonnie. We looked at panorama surveys, we did our own surveys. So I think we did the best we could, but now we actually have data. And the important thing is consistent data multiple years, right? And so that's how we came up with action plan number 4, is to continue our vertical alignment, continue our curriculum development, and continue to have data analysis drive those two, right? So things like focusing on our collaboration, focusing on our Foothill collaboration for our dual credit classes, focusing on what are the really big standards students need to have to be successful in the next class, especially in things like our CTE pathways, right, that lead into dual credit classes. And then also looking at how we are going to assess and making sure that we are looking at equitable grading practices, right? So all of this, it's a really big it's a very lofty action plan, but we kind of felt like they were all linked and it needed to be together in one action, number 4.
And that brings us to action plan 5. We are really proud of the Wellness Center and the social emotional supports we have put in place at Tide. So thank you for all the amazing resources. Students have access to the Wellness Center. They've had tours in the Wellness Center. Our counselors and our mental health support specialists push into Nucleus. They facilitate wellness circles. We just partnered with Mission B, and it was awesome to see 30 kids doing yoga in the game room, right? For mindfulness training, and staff participated in it as well. What came out in the theme is we really have solid tier 1 and tier 3, but we want to really identify those tier 2 interventions. So a laser-like focus on, you know, tier 1s for all students at Tide, right? Whether it's the things I just mentioned, whether it's advisory in Nucleus, whether it's restorative practice, right? And how we handle discipline. That's tier 1. Tier 3, we have robust ed specialists. We have counselors supporting students who need more accommodations or modification. It's the tier 2, those targeted academic support and social emotional supports that we want to refine further. So that's action plan 5. And really focus on not only the social emotional, but also because they're tied together, right? If you're doing well and you feel supported academically, that also supports your social emotional well-being and vice versa. So those are our 5 action plans. You know, as the WASC visiting team comes through, they may agree or disagree. So we may be revising them, we'll see. But this is what we're working on at Tide. And what, you know, we came up with 9 areas of growth. One, and you can see that in chapter 4, one being, you know, the continued recruitment efforts are clearly one. Of course, we're continuing to nurture our 2 CTE pathways, graphic design and computer science. But those are things already in process and moving along. So the staff prioritize these 5 big ones that we want to work on. And so with that, we thank you and ask if you have any questions for us.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay.
So hard to be president. Are you looking at me? Did I say? So the only question I have, great work. Wow. And I am very excited when I'm at your school doing my mentoring thing. My students are very excited. So as I said before, it's a great way to get to know your school through the eyes of a student who's very well supported. My only question is like music and fun. So I always have to have that, ask those types of questions too, like clubs or fun, and maybe not the academic piece. Reason I'm asking this, I've been bugging some of my colleagues talking about play. Been talking to some other school board members in the county, the lack of play, right, with little children, right? The play deficit, which I'm concerned about. But then when you talk about play, it also comes up with high school students. That idea to not be just, to be able to explore, which so often you can do with music or, performing arts and there's other kinds of things, or clubs. So talk to me about play at your school.
So just to kind of start that, there's a lot of information on, how students have fun at Tide in Focus Group E for school culture. But I just want to highlight all of the fun activities that our students get to do at Tide Academy. Like, I think 2 weeks ago, we had like a salsa competition. And it was so much fun. And then sometimes they're just out in the quad dancing or line dancing together. I try to include some of those lunchtime activities in the cover photos so that you can actually see pictures of the kids doing things like that. Sometimes we have mini golf outside, right? Sometimes we have little fairs. We just had last Friday an archery competition. Oh my goodness, the students eat those competitions up. And as far as clubs go, we do have
17.
so close to 20, and that's a lot for a small school, right? Considering that we're not nearly as large as the other schools. You want to chime in here?
Yeah, we also partner with community partners. We have a service club and we have extracurriculars, yearbook, choir, robotics, and ballet folklorico that all meet on Thursday afternoons, or they can meet any day, in addition to our after-school homework center. So that was one of the goals last year, right? As we're coming out of the pandemic, build an after-school life on the campus. And so those are the things. I'd love to have a band. I can't find an advisor, but my choir advisor is willing to have a band and our students sing, right? So yeah, we are looking for that. And then of course, a big piece was the lovely 1.5 year long process to get the multi-school agreement. We had 20 students for spring tryout and some on swimming team. We have several playing tennis this spring. We actually had 2 students make varsity soccer last winter season. So we definitely, that's an area that will continue to be and was one of the things we want to work on, but we just didn't prioritize it as an action item because it's in progress. There's a lot of fun on the Tide campus, either throughout the day or after school. We're trying to get more kids in these after school activities as well. And then we're looking to really expand film and drama.
So I also just want to add our task. So the Tide Associated Student Council is super active. They literally hand wrote a heart for every single student in the school and a message on the back of it specified to that student, right? I will admit to coming from a big school, and I will admit to them doing something similar where I did not give them this idea, by the way, where it was coming from the ceiling, but it was just the student's name and a general message. These were personalized messages, right? And so I think that's something that you get with small schools. We had a very successful winter formal on Friday where we had somewhere, don't quote me, but somewhere around 120, a little bit more, I think, students coming. So if you think about that, it's like almost 50% of our student body that are showing up to our winter formals. Same thing that happened with homecoming, right? And that was at our school, and the students changed the whole school into this black light neon thing, and they came all theme dressed, and you can really feel the love when you come to these events. And there's 2 more things I want to say. We have this amazing wellness center that's very well staffed that we talked about in one of our goals, but we have a WAC, which is a student-centered wellness advisory club, and they give us feedback that way on how to keep student health and wellness and the playfulness alive. I know we came up with things like the chess club from that because students wanted those outlets. And they also, what the WAC also gave us is, we're focusing a grade level per day, and for their nucleus class, they're going up and they're just doing mindfulness. So there was a coloring station, there was a writing a letter to a soldier station. Like there were all these different stations for wellness and well-being. We just did 10th grade, which is what she was whispering at me. And then what am I forgetting? I said two things. I'm forgetting the other thing, but I think you really, if you spend time on Tides campus, you'll see that it is coming alive. That's not to say that we don't have big dreams and how we can get them to come more alive, but it's getting there.
And our Take a Break Thursday.
That's what I was going to say. Once a quarter.
We have the boxing gym, we have youth community service, we have Boys and Girls Club, we have soccer, we have basketball. Yes, we do leverage the space of that.
Miniature
courtyard.
golfing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you so much. Wow. Sounds fun.
Thank you all for allowing me to be on the WASC committee. I think that was the first thing Simone had me do when I came to MA, when I was like, yep. And she said, you'd be really great on the WASC committee. I'm like, what's that? I was like, oh, this is why she has me here. So I'm excited to come back and not be wonk, but celebrating, right? And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm really interested in the Wellness Center and learning more about that. So if there's a location or just, I'd love to come see it just to have a visual. The other thing I wanted to note in your report was really this idea of like diverse stakeholders. I'm not hearing the complaints from East Palo Alto as much. I think that's huge. And I just want to commend your leadership team for transitioning it into a positive spoken about place. And I just, that means a lot to my community. And I'm looking at the number of students who are going there and the number of parents who were looking for a smaller environment for their student while still giving them sports, which I was like, Simone must be magic or something. I'm like, how did she get that? They said no. And then I'm like, seeing this in here and I'm like, what did you do? I want to get some of that magic. So I'm excited about that because I know a couple of students were very, they were parent told that they had to go there and they were like, they don't have sports. So this is actually a really good thing. And thank you for being community-based. I think our partners are really excited that they're back at Tide and supporting Tide. As far as the band, I would strongly suggest you think about Epicenter Arts. They do go into the schools and provide some of that, sometimes with contracts, sometimes they have their own funding, but they may have someone for you. So with that said, I really just greatly appreciate this. And our families don't know about this when I'm out in the community, whether in San Carlos or whether in East Palo Alto. I tell them about, all our small school options, and they were like, we don't know. So keep up the good work, and hopefully I'll be able to share even more. So if you ever get a video or pamphlet I could put out and let people know, that would be great.
thank you.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I just want to echo everyone's gratitude on this really thorough report. I haven't gotten through the entire book yet. But I know. At least it made it to my address. See, that's a good thing. But as a new trustee to a high school district, I just want to understand. So I guess this is the big process with the WASC committee, but as a new school, there was also annual check-ins. Okay. So then
every year
okay.
Tide added a grade level. We had to do what's called a substantive change visit. So last year that was on Zoom with some juniors because it was the first junior class. And it was about, I don't know, a 2-hour visit. But this year it was a full half-day Zoom with a WASC director who met with students, parents, seniors. And so what they did then is, gave us the feedback, and then we got some nice, good feedback. And they ratified us as a school, and then the senior class as well. So when Tide first opened, there was initial visit and there was initial WASC accreditation for opening and having that freshman class. And so now that we're in the fourth year, we're going through the big self-study. Typically it would be every 6 years, right? But because now we're a full school, we could have probably postponed it, but we're like, no, we got this, we're doing it. And yeah, so this, we're hoping for a 6-year, the 6-year accreditation with whatever the midterm parameters will be. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member comments?
I did hear Daphne say that she was totally willing to make it fun again for the next round.
Yeah.
You're getting more members for your committee by the minute. Student trustee Swaminathan, would you like to make a motion to approve item 13.2, approval of Tide Academy WASP self-study?
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor of approving
Aye.
unanimously passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is item 13.3, approval of preliminary space proposal for Oxford Day Academy.
Yes, so this 13.3 for the preliminary space proposal for Oxford Day Academy is related to Prop 39, and it's implementing regulations. So this is a process where a charter school that resides within our boundaries has the ability to request space from the district. So we have a Prop 39 for both Summit and Everest as they sit in our buildings. So Oxford Day Academy has made a timely request for facilities from the district starting in the 23-24 school year based on projected in-district attendance of about 118. The requirement, I believe, is 88. The district determined that ODA's enrollment projections were reasonable for the 23-24 year. ODA has specifically requested the Green Street location facility. While this location will not provide the same types of space that are available from our comprehensive high schools, they have agreed to accept space at the Green Street location in lieu of another facility. I will be touring the facility with ODA this Friday. And all other details of the space will be finalized and negotiated by staff, including with a preliminary offer and delivered on or before February 17th. So we do have some timelines over the next few months. Once the charter has accepted the proposal from the district, a final offer of space will be presented to Oxford Day Academy no later than April 17th. And then a facility use agreement will come back to the board for a approval at a later date. So this is a request of approval for preliminary space for Oxford Day Academy to use the Green Street facility.
Okay, do any board members have questions? Okay, Carrie.
I may have asked this before, but the charter law is so confusing to me. I wanted to ask again. So Oxford Day is chartered by the County Office of Education, but the law says that we have to provide the space, because what's sort of unfair about this, the County Office of Education is closing programs. They have lots of space, I think, right? And we don't have as much space. I do think it's fine to put them at Green Street. That's probably the best option, but in my ideal world, the chartering organization would take care of the space, but that's just not how the law works, right? So
Unfortunately, no, that is not how the law works.
I thought the same thing, trustee, Carrie, because I was like, how do we do this if, it's nothing against Oxford Day Academy. I think they deserve a space, but I just didn't know how is it that we're responsible, but they did the approval?
So the county office of ed does hold the petition. The funding still comes through us, as well as the requirement for Prop 39.
So did they hold the position or did they just overrule us on appeal?
They overruled on appeal.
And this might have happened before I was elected, but did we ever hear from them like how we heard from some of the other charter schools where they came and presented?
Oh, yeah, no, they have not presented to Sequoia. Most of their presentations, I believe, staff has gone to San Mateo County Office of Ed for presentations during their board meeting.
Yeah, they report to the county.
I think they'd be willing to come here. I just visited them today, just looking at their instructional model. And the new head of schools is wanting to be more collaborative. I think she's not she, but the school is in a collaborative with us. So they're looking to be connected because they are doing some unique things and they have transitioned their program. So if the board wanted it, I'm sure we could ask them.
I would have known you were going. That's the other thing I would like to visit. I have not been there in probably 3 years. So there isn't, there isn't the county office of education would not be willing to help us out on this. We just have to provide space.
The law mandates that we have to provide space.
Even though they mandate, I mean, I guess the location would not be quite right for them anyway, right?
Correct.
I'm just wondering if there's just isn't a collaborative approach. You just have to.
They've requested a specific facility, which is, we do have a growing program currently housed at Green Street, which is unfortunate. But we can find a new location for that program. I'm not a big fan of charters that are housed within large comprehensives. So this really is a better offer. Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the preliminary space proposal for Oxford Day Academy?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, do we need a roll call on this? No. Okay, all in favor of approval? Aye.
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 Okay, that unanimously passed. Okay, the next item is 13.4, adoption of resolution number 1744, directing preparation of the 2023-24 engineers report for the Sequoia High School District Maintenance Assessment District by roll call vote.
Yes, our district is very fortunate to receive Maintenance Assessment District funds, also known as MAD money. There is a fairly hefty procedure that we go through each year to be able to collect this money. This money is used for really keeping up our school sites. We talked about previously, like keeping them open to our community. So these funds are used for grounds department personnel, upkeep of fields, general landscaping, water and irrigation system, removal of graffiti, repairs to some of our sporting facilities, lighting and so forth. And so this comes in several different stages to be able to accept and then use this money. Those stages, we direct an engineer to prepare the engineer's report. Then we develop a preliminary budget. We receive the engineer's report. Then we preliminary accept the engineer's report. And we set a date for a public hearing. We hold a public hearing, accept the engineer's report, and then the assessment engineer will file the levies and then we will receive the funds. So for here, the board, by approving this resolution, is allowing staff to proceed with preparing the resolutions, the legal documents, and the engineering reports. And then we will come back to the public hearing at the June 7th meeting, as well as at that time, we'll be able to determine whether to proceed with the levying of the assessment. So again, this is really just another show of support within our boundaries from our taxpayers in the form of this maintenance assessment fee structure. So this is a resolution by roll call.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this item? Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 13, to adopt resolution number 1744?
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
A second?
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
student trustee Swaminathan,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson, president Ginn.
Yes.
Motion adopted.
Okay, thank you. So now we move on to future agenda items. If there's anything any board member would like to suggest for future agenda items.
I have something. So I'm actually glad she's still on the call, but I had a conversation with the MAPTA president. I think one of the things that's worth looking at. Oh, I had a conversation with the MAPTA president, Paige Winikoff, and she's also on the Los Alamitos board. And one of the things that, I heard was a concern at multiple school sites was with the new bell schedule, how traffic is occurring. And I think this might especially be an issue at MA in relation that they're having new construction that's being built right across the street. And I think the fact that the start times were moved to align with the elementary school, unfortunately, it leads to a lot of traffic, both in the Carmont area and in the MA area. So I think that's something that the board might be interested in looking into and understanding, is it an issue and what needs to be done about that in order to fix it.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, just
Samantha.
wanted to say a parent actually did reach out to me about that. So I think it's of growing importance.
I wonder, Superintendent, interim superintendent, I know that there was a law that was instituted that we had to start at a certain time. So can you speak to that? Because I'm not quite sure if there's something that we can change, because it may be influenced by law.
I have yet to see a school that doesn't have traffic at the start time, regardless of what time they start school. Definitely the congestion around traffic around MA is it's, with students crossing on bikes and so forth. I'm not quite clear on what specifically is being asked. I would request that the PTA president reach out to me or email me specifics, and then I can follow up and provide answers and see if it's a larger conversation for the board, or if staff can provide feedback and information.
Go ahead, Carrie.
So a couple things. So for the tour of ODA, would you want us to reach out individually, or should we try to schedule something?
Oh,
Laura?
I will work with Laura. I'll work with Laura and we'll get some things scheduled also with the county. And I'll talk to, I meet with her on Friday, so I'll talk to her about that.
And then along the same lines, the site visits, is that in the works, or I know everybody's so busy. Is there a way of doing that easier? Because I know going to site councils was one idea. I still, for me personally, I prefer doing the site visits the way we did it before, because then you just get a broader range of students, a broader range of teachers,
I
right?
think I'll say specific to the site visits, we addressed that at our last retreat, but I know that we plan to revisit it again at a soon to be scheduled retreat. I know we're
Is that
working
because
on,
we
we're
haven't-
working on a date, but that will be a topic of discussion.
Because we haven't quite figured out how we want to do it. Is that why?
No, I think I recall that we did figure out that we were going to do the
Okay.
at-large meetings, but the frequency and when they were going to start and just the other details from site visits and protocols around visiting sites still need to be worked out. We were going to do that in early March at the next retreat.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Go ahead, Shawnees.
I have a couple of things that are on my list. So I mentioned this, tell me if I'm wrong, President Jen, did I email you and say I'd like to have something on the agenda around learning from our settlement? And just maybe not talking about the settlements, of course, because they're confidential, but how can we institute a process where we can learn from it to see kind of where we need to grow in gaps of services or processes with special education. I did mention it to Ms. Hanson. I preluded by sending it in December and then asked again. So I'm wondering if we can put that on the agenda somehow, just because we're meeting a lot about litigation, and I think there's some things we can learn from it that would help us support some of our work that we're doing in litigation. So if we could put that on the agenda, or is that the right place?
Yeah, so I've heard traffic issues, which may be addressed offline, the settlement processes and site visits as things. And the plan for the retreat is to discuss these and any other ideas board members have.
Yeah, I
And then to
think-
prioritize from there.
I think one thing we talked about yesterday when we went to tour Los Lamitos was creating a buildings and grounds subcommittee. I don't know if we already have one, but of the board.
So are these retreat things we're talking about, or is this future agenda items? I'm,
So the
do you know what I'm
plan,
saying? Like, I'm
so,
confused.
yeah, so at the retreat, we talked about how we would select what items we put on our future agendas. And what we said we would do would be to get all the ideas from all the board members, and then as a group, decide which ideas we would put on which agendas for the coming few months, and then revisit. And we ran out of time at the retreat and didn't get to that part.
Okay.
So
'Cause
the
we're
idea is
asking
to
for
do a
future
follow-up
agenda items,
retreat.
I'm kind of confused. I'm like,
The idea is to do a follow-up retreat and finish what we had we just ran out of time the last meeting. So to review all of the items and prioritize and put items onto agendas.
okay. So should we be asking for future agenda items right now? Is like, how, yeah.
Well,
I'm
I
kinda-
mean, if there's some,
There's one that I.
yes, or we can do it at the soon to be retreat. So
Okay.
either way is
There
fine.
is one that I think is important when when I went to the site decision-making meeting with Suffolk, and I wasn't planning on going, it just happened, we were there the same day. I was there for the lunar on the lawn. And so I came just to be supportive. But this theme of like, we know you can't talk about what happened, but can you acknowledge the pain, the impact, whether intentional or not? How can we create a healing plan? And so I wanted to bring that back because that actually has been the question in the community. I don't know what's been coming out of your conversations, Carrie, but that is what people has been coming to me about. It's like, what is the healing plan? And I don't have an answer for that because I can't speak for the board. I can only, explain what we are doing, that we're open, and that we've had our retreat. But even saying that is actually important, right? Because they're not at every meeting that we're in, so they don't know our journey. And so that's coming up more. And when I think about when I went to the CSBA conference in December, when I was looking at some of the boards that were really talking about equity, or they were talking about being in the driver's seat of communication out to the community, or whether it was talking about facilities and equity, they all talked about owning their own story and being in the driver's seat and being a little bit more forthcoming with information, not waiting for someone to ask or assume, but really getting that information out. And I do think this theme of trust and transparency and communication is really important. And I just feel like we're behind the 8 ball and giving that information back out to the community somehow, even if it's, so I'd love for us to discuss, even if it's 3 things that we want to do, so that the community knows, so that Crystal can also have some type of communication that she can share with her partners. And I think she's meeting with everyone. And so that's helpful, I think, in the healing process. And I know we've hit some areas where we were like, ooh, okay, let's go back and think about this. But I do believe we need to get it in the driver's seat and start sharing what we are doing. So I just want to put it out there. Hopefully it can be I can wait to the retreat, but I also have been the parent on the other end when I'm like, the crisis is over. Now you want to respond. So it's responding during the crisis that I think is important, or during the times when people are most formulating their thoughts and thinking around our district. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else is interested, but
I think this might be something worth discussing at a retreat and
Yeah, I agree that this would be a good retreat topic to dive a little deeper into. And then I did want to bring up one thing too for future agenda items. So the 2x2 with BRSSD is coming up on March 7th. So Carrie and I are on that subcommittee. Normally it would be good to have it on the agenda, which would be today's meeting. So that we could just talk about, are there any topics, right, that we want to bring up and align on an agenda? But I think we found out about it kind of late. So part of moving the trustee reports to the beginning was so we could read out post committee meeting. So in the future, I guess, you know, keeping in mind additional 2x2s or 2x2x2s, ideally we would want to have the meeting before that meeting to align on topics and priorities for discussion. That way we can have a more effective meeting. But I think at this point, we're going to just do it offline, right?
The only thing about that, there's
yeah.
just so many meetings going on.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems just with that meeting, I think the people participating haven't even on this side. I was saying that there's just so many 2+2 meetings that would eat up a lot of board time. I think the bigger problem with that particular meeting is I don't think we've had a lot of input on the agenda, right?
Well, I know that this meeting just, we found out about it really late,
Right.
so I don't know.
So in previous 2x2s or other community meetings previously, in the district, the agendas have not been discussed at board meetings.
But we could, but one of the problems, I could see what we could do. If you have something you want to talk about, just let Crystal know, because she'll be
Right, I
working
do
with
communicate with the superintendent. It's usually, the agenda has to do with the two trustees that are serving with the superintendent, with the 2x2, with the feeder district or the partnering district. And then we report out at large.
I would say if you had like a specific thing that you felt like you needed feedback on, and you actually had a topic to discuss, that would merit putting it on the agenda, discussing it. But if there was no specific thing and we had it, and then there wasn't a specific thing to discuss, it might be not as good as if, so maybe it's just generally catching up, or maybe they have something they want to bring to us. But if there's something in particular that you kind of want guidance on bringing to that would make it be a good discussion item. And I don't know whether there is or isn't. We can talk about that offline if there is, and then go from there. Okay, anyone else? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
so moved.
I second.
All in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Hi.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you.